Namaste, everybody. Welcome back to Ripples in the Sand, the podcast brought to you by the folks at Drifting Sands Haibun. Here we invite Haibun poets who have appeared in the journal to both read and discuss their poetry and give us their thoughts on the craft. This is your host, Sangita Kalarkil. To our regular listeners, thank you so much for supporting us. Hope you have subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell as well. Please like, love, comment, share, and spread the word of Haikai poetry to your friends. Mostly do comment because that makes a lot of difference because of how these algorithms work. Now, today's guest is a Pushcart Prize and Touchstone Award nominated poet who writes from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and Georgian Bay in Canada. She retired as a general manager of early years and literacy program and was also a former associate editor of Triveni Haikai India's The Haibun Gallery. Her work has been published internationally widely. Friends, I'm pleased to welcome to the Ripples an exquisite person, an accomplished hygiene, and my friend, Reid Hepworth. Welcome, Reid. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So you just moved to the eastern part of Canada, uh,
Yes.
and the place is so close to nature and water. Yeah.
Yeah, we're 2 blocks from the water, and it's really hot here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's really hot. It's like around 30, and I'm not used to humidity.
Mm.
I'm learning humidity because you don't get humidity so much in BC. You get damp,
Oh,
so it's a bit different. But I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the warmth. It's quite nice.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So summer's already set in. Yeah.
Oh, totally, 100%. Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier that we're expecting a squall tonight. I don't know squalls either, but I know squalls for winter. But apparently, there's a squall coming in tonight, and we're supposed to have thunder showers and hail. So,
Hail as
yeah,
well.
hail.
Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, we're supposed to be having thunder showers as well. We're pretty close to your place. So
yeah,
I'm in Minnesota, you're in Ontario. And so geographically, we are closer. So maybe there's a huge thunderstorm coming. And
yeah,
listeners, in case there's a hail or anything, you'll probably get to hear some of it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Could be very
Well,
exciting.
very exciting
Add to the
indeed.
drama.
Oh, all right. So let's first quickly start with a tanka prose from you and first a reading. So
For sure.
um, yeah.
For
So
sure.
first, Social Graces,
Okay,
uh,
great.
which was
Yeah.
published in issue 26 of Drifting Sands. Would you like to tell our listeners anything as a background, or would you like to comment on it later on?
Um, yeah, I can comment on it after. I'll maybe read it
Okay.
first.
Okay.
So,
Great.
social graces. It's almost midnight, and I'm schlepping my way to work for the graveyard shift. A whoosh of cool air hits me as I make my descent into the underground station. A welcome reprieve from the unrelenting heat and humidity. It feels so good that I just stand there for a second, soaking it up. A guy in a security uniform brushes past me onto the platform. He jostles ahead as the train pulls in. As he steps inside, his feet slip out from underneath him, arms windmilling dramatically before he crashes onto his back, brown paper bag falling out of his hand. I go to help, but he is sliding all over the aisle in a massive pool of vomit. The stench is overwhelming. I quickly check my pockets for tissue, but come up short. By the time we reach the next station, the guy is sitting alone and everyone else is studiously avoiding eye contact. A breach in the fabric of humanity. Sometimes I wonder how we ever evolved.
So strongly poignant, and this one hits one right in the heart.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Beautiful. Would you like to say something about it?
Yeah, I mean, this was an experience I had like 25 years ago. I lived in Toronto for a short time, and I used to work the graveyard shift in shelter, and I was going to work late, and it was a weekend, and
So,
everybody was partying except for the security guard and I. Yeah,
so I
so
just, for the sake of our listeners, I just wanted to clarify what a graveyard shift is. It's just a
oh
shift
yeah,
in the
it's nighttime. Like
nighttime shift. Yes.
I worked like midnight till 8 in the morning or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when everybody else is going to sleep or going out to the bars and stuff like that, there are those of us who go to work. And
Work.
I'm assuming he was going to his job because he had a brown paper bag. And it was just it was an interesting experience to sort of see, you know, what we can be like and
Mm,
what's the word? How anonymous and self-involved we can be,
right.
and so yeah, I just yeah, it was just an interesting thing, and this piece, I mean, it's a funny piece for me because I actually thought this was going to be a Haibun, and I wrote it like I don't know a year and a half ago or so, and I sent it off as a Haibun. It came back like they often do, and yeah, I just I probably did about 20 or 30 haiku or senaru for it, and nothing worked. And
Mm,
so, I took a look at it after it sat there for a long time, and I thought, why don't I try it with a tanka? And yeah, it worked. So yeah, yeah.
the tanka is so beautiful as well. I mean, a breach in the fabric of humanity. Sometimes I wonder how we ever evolved. Oh, so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
So, Reid, can you talk a little bit about the role of poetry in drawing the attention to the reader to social issues? You know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think as poets, as writers, well, as human beings, I think it's really important to talk about social issues. I mean, we have a voice. People either read our work or they hear us, like right now
hmm
in this
hmm
podcast. We have a chance to, open people's eyes. We have a chance to raise awareness, to bring about change in some ways.
hmm
But for me, I think as a writer, oh, he's gone off there. For me as a writer, it's important for me to speak my truth and what I know.
hmm
And I think just, the life that I've led, my experiences working with people, because I've worked in a lot of different social service settings,
Yeah,
and I've seen a lot and experienced a lot, done a lot of heavy lifting. It makes sense to write about that. And for me, it's about writing about what you know. So that's where this
yeah,
piece came from. Yeah.
yeah. And you have several others in your repertoire, similar ones, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. So, actually, it does take me to the next one, Blinders On.
Okay.
Um, and this one was published in the Haibun Journal, issue 5/1, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Blinders on. The ambulance arrives. The living room rug is covered in blood. Not mine. When I was really small, I used to pretend that the grooves in the rug were little islands. My tiny feet would jump from island to island, and I would pretend to be on great adventures, making up stories as I moved around the room. Now the islands border rust-covered rivers, the blood following the path of least resistance, streams and streams of it. When the paramedic tries to talk to me, I look at him and say nothing. Hot tears run down my face. I don't even care that I look ugly, my face contorted, red and blotchy. I replay all the other times I've been here before, and as they wheel the stretcher in, I look out the window and notice the neighbors have their curtains drawn. Thunderstorm. The turtle retreats into its shell. This is actually one of my favorite Haibuns. Yeah.
It's just beautiful, and especially the coup at the end, thunderstorm. The turtle retreats into its shell. So now that we've heard this poem, can you talk about the context a little? And was this a personal experience?
Yeah, this poem probably was about 50 years in the making. It was an experience I had as a child,
Mm,
and I've always wanted to write about it. And I find that with writing, especially around childhood stuff, can be quite cathartic.
mm,
And so I really wanted to bring this one to light so I could let it go.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, so for me, like I like to write about my own personal experiences because I'm the most authentic that way. I think I can speak my truth. I can get out what I need to say, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about, social issues, because I've worked with children in trauma, I've worked with adults in trauma. I was a child in trauma myself,
yeah,
so for me, it's really important to talk about those things. I don't think that we should, you know, like like the haiku, like the haiku there, thunderstorm, the turtle retreats into its shell. I mean, that very much was me as a child.
yeah,
You put yourself out there and you're not seen. So
yeah,
you hide, right?
yeah.
And so for me, it's just really important to acknowledge those pieces.
Yeah, and it's the truth for so many people.
Yeah.
It could be as well,
Yes.
right? I mean, I know of several kids like that, and I myself was like that, many of us as a child. So for me, it's almost like when I read your poems, it's like you have given voice to what I felt in a way, maybe not the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
experiences or whatever, but
Yeah.
a lot of feelings. And yeah, and that's where writing autobiographical is something that you like to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think that that's the nice thing about it because it's about that connection that a reader has. And for this particular piece, I mean, it came out really quickly. It wasn't something I had to work at because it's been in my system for so
Mm-hmm.
long. It's been,
Mm-hmm.
formulating for so long. But what was I going to say? With this piece, I didn't want to tell too much. I wanted to make sure that the reader is going to get their own experience out of it without saying exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because then,
Mm-hmm.
there's that other piece too, is when you say too much, you can turn people away as well. And
Right.
I want to engage people.
Yeah.
I want to bring them in and they have their own stories and they
Yeah.
can take what they want from this and
Yeah.
make it their own, right?
Yeah.
You
This
know,
is true.
feel
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're such a good storyteller as well. So that makes all the difference in the prose of the Haibun, I feel. So like the next one that you have for us, a
Sure.
fresh start, that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Uh, and that one is told so beautifully. And the story itself uh, it's an experience really. So a little bit about a fresh start, not a fresh start. This was published in Haiku Katha, issue 12, and it was also selected for Red Moon's Skipping Stones anthology and Contemporary Haibun 18. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And this is my first braided one.
Yay!
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about
Yeah.
braided one, but
Yeah.
first, yeah, let's
You want to read
hear
it?
it.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
Fresh
please.
start. Grade 3. Skin knees and a pixie cut. Mum's last attempt to keep me in pigtails and dresses has failed. I've set my limits and have started picking out my own clothes. No more waking up and seeing skirt sets laid out at the bottom of my bed. The thinnest sliver. Mum quietly cringes at my fashion choices. Dad calls me his little bra burner when I refuse to wear my bikini top at the beach. I am secretly pleased when a total stranger mistakes me for a boy. Of light through the trees. I want to fit in as much as everyone does, but my friends have long hair, wear mood rings, and listen to pop rock. I listen to Gloria Steinem on TV with a growing realization that times are changing, just not quickly enough. New moon. I make my stand at dinner. I refuse to clean the dishes while the men sit at the dining table talking politics. My dad grins as he picks up his plate. The thinnest sliver of light through the trees. New moon.
Ah, beautiful. Thank you. I
Thank you.
love the statement you make with this poem.
Thank you.
And this braided haibun, it was so effectively done.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you again for reading the haiku again for the listeners, because braided haibun is, it's easy to figure that out when you read it on paper. But yeah, but as you read it, as you listen to it, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, for our listeners, can you elaborate a bit about a braided haibun and why is it so difficult? Personally, I find it very difficult
Oh,
to
it's very
write
difficult.
one.
It's very there's like I think this is the only one that I've had published. I've tried them, and often what happens with them is they could, they probably work better with the haiku at the beginning or at the end, right? Or the center at the
A
beginning or
haibun.
the end.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and this one could have worked. I think this one could have worked quite well with it at the end as well. Um,
Mhm.
but 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 it was really nice trying this out. But so for me, it's about how the prose and each line of the haiku interconnects and how they help move the pace forward, I guess, basically.
Yeah, so for our listeners, a braided haibun is when, unlike in usually that you see, where a haibun starts with a haiku, or it, there is a haiku in the middle, or ends with a haiku. This one, the three lines of the haiku are braided along with the prose,
Yeah.
so it's kind of blended in.
Yes.
So it's a
It's
difficult,
tricky.
it's very tricky
Yeah.
because the lines have to go with the prose,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. So for me, with Fresh Start, so each line of the haiku that I have in there, I would say they kind of bring about a growing awareness to the previous piece of the prose. So there's a
Yes,
build up of the storyline.
yes.
So when you read it, it helps pace the narrative. It gives each paragraph an added dimension,
Hmm.
which may not work when it's read aloud the way that I just did, but when you read it, you can see it, right? I
Oh
think
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so.
It does work.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
it was very beautiful to see it as well on on the page.
Thank you.
Haiku Katha issue 12. I'll put a link to it in the notes, as well
Oh,
as a link to Skipping Stone's anthology and Contemporary Haibun.
oh, thank you.
Yeah. Um, so the next one, Haves, Have Nots, was published in Blithe Spirit, issue 34 1. Um, you want to read it before we
Sure.
talk about
Yeah.
it?
Haves, have-nots. A siren pierces the night, reverberating down the empty streets. On the waterfront, a small crowd gathers around a lamppost. Tents and shelters are abandoned for the moment. A few feet away lays the prone figure of a man on a bench, one bare arm outstretched. As the ambulance approaches, the crowd dissipates. Wrapped for winter, boats in the harbor. Wrapped for winter, boats in the harbor.
Oh my God. The haiku in this haibun is brilliant. Brilliant.
Thank you. I don't think anyone's ever said that
Oh, this
about
is,
anything. So,
come on,
hey.
come on. Uh, I mean, actually, this brings one of my favorite questions, which I ask just about everybody, all our guests on
Okay.
Ripples in the Sand. What comes first for you, haiku or prose, or tanka or prose? What
Yeah.
comes first?
I think for me, I would say probably 95% of the time it's the prose that comes first.
Mm.
For this particular one, though, the coup came first.
Ah,
Yeah, and actually with blinders on, it was the same. But yeah, I think I'm way more comfortable writing prose than I am writing haiku.
mhm.
Tanka, I feel pretty comfortable with. Haiku and senaru are harder for me. They definitely are harder for me. So the prose usually comes first, but this one, yeah, this one came about, yeah, when I was walking my dog, and I do my writing on my phone, like on my iPhone, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. And because I've been coming back and forth to Ontario a little bit, I was here in the wintertime, and I'd never actually seen boats in the harbor that were wrapped before. Because
Ah,
I'm from BC, I'm from the West Coast. Their boats are out all year long. We don't get any snow really at all. I mean, people don't even
right.
have shovels there. So it was such a, yeah, it was such an interesting thing. Like we were walking down by the waterfront and I saw these boats, but it brought back to me something I'd seen the day before when I was
Yeah,
downtown.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the disparity between the two pieces was so strong that I was like, oh,
It it
I got my voice recorder out because I had these big mittens on, and I was like, trying to write with my voice recorder. So
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, that's why it goes so well. I mean, the coup goes so well with the prose as well. I mean, because the story just struck you
yeah,
as you saw the boats,
yeah,
right? Oh,
yeah,
it's very that moment is very clear in this
hmm,
piece.
yeah,
So I like that, and the title haves nots.
hmm,
It's like, yeah, it's brilliant.
yeah.
Uh,
And the nice thing actually about the nice thing about writing the prose first is that or sorry, the haiku or senaru first is that it seems to move the pace quicker. I think
hmm.
because for me, I can have a lot of not a lot, but I can have a number of Haibun that are waiting in the wings,
Hmm.
and I find that with writing, I could do 10, 20 haiku or senaru that don't work, and
Right.
so it's nice when it does come first.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because without the poem, that would be a short story or
exactly.
a short,
Yeah,
right? It's
it
it's it's the haiku that makes it
it
what it
it
is.
does, and I can't even think about short stories now that don't have a haiku or senaru, or like, I just doesn't make sense to me to not have them now.
Yes, yes.
It's my mind has been officially blown by Haibun.
And you do such a great job at it. Um, so, how about another one?
Sure.
What remains? Uh, let me introduce this one to our listeners. What Remains was published in Drifting Sands Haibun issue 25. Um, it won an honorable mention in the second annual Rachel Sutcliffe Memorial Haiku Arts Contest, and yeah, it's a beautiful Haibun. Please.
Thank you. Okay. What remains? The cabin above ours burned down years ago. A lightning strike or chimney fire made short work of the wooden structure, leaving only a charred ruin. Over the years, sphagnum moss, sword fern, and wild blueberries have taken up residence, filling the gap between the trees. From a distance, it's hard to tell that anything else ever existed. The only evidence is a crumbling rock foundation, some broken windows, rusted pots, and blackened utensils. For us kids, the old cabin site had taken on an air of spooky proportions. Questions remain as to what happened to the cabin's occupants. Did they perish in the fire? Is the land haunted? We obsess about it. Hester, the oldest of us, decides she wants to know the truth. So on this clear spring morning, she brings her Ouija board to the site and sets the task of summoning spirits. Hester instructs us to sit in a tight circle in the middle of the old foundation, Ouija board in the center. We place our fingers on the planchet and wait, excitement mixed with trepidation. Hester yells, "Spirits, we beseech you to make your presence known." Nothing happens. Nervous energy gives way to giggles. Our fingers lay motionless on the planchet until a light breeze begins to pick up in the trees. Then the planchet begins a slow motion trek across the board. Our hands are pulled from side to side. Excitedly, we call out letters to each other as words begin to form. "Tell us, spirit, are you friend or foe?" Hester asked. Abruptly, the sky darkens and the air becomes cold. We hold our fingers steady, concentrating on the moving planchet. When the wind rips through the trees and a large thunderclap splits open the sky, our fear overrides our curiosity. We take flight before we're swallowed up, leaving the Ouija board behind. Sudden downpour. Floating inside an old glass jar, one dead mouse.
Awesome. This topic is very different. Yeah, but I can totally see this. My daughter is at an age where she and her friends talk about ghosts and Bloody Mary and the Lady
Yeah.
in White and all these. Some of them I had to Google, I don't even know. But I've read many of your Haibun Tanka prose, and many poems of yours describe these wonderful adventures. Has a Mark Twain-like quality in the sense of childhood adventures, except that this one is in poetry. So I love it.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us a bit more about your work, about childhood memories.
I don't think I ever. I don't think that when I started writing Haibun, that I thought I'd be writing about childhood so much.
Oh, but
But
that's so interesting.
but yeah, the floodgates just opened. I don't know why. I think it's because I started thinking about just personal experiences, and I think as you get older, you become more nostalgic as well.
Hmm.
And I think, I don't know. I mean, I've worked with children like pretty much my whole life in one capacity or another, and so I've been telling stories for a long time. So yeah, I think it's natural. Speaking to what you know, like when I was younger, I decided, like when I was 8, that I was going to be a writer. I told my parents this. I think they were quite horrified. But yeah, I know. And my dad worked in television, and so he went to work and he asked his writer friends to give me some tips. And so, the thing that they came back with was write what you know.
Mm.
And so I think that that's part of why I write about that, because they're old stories, they're favorites. Some of them aren't favorite. Like some of them are more the catharsis part, but yeah. So I think it's just writing about what you know, and because you can speak to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have fun. I'm having fun. This was particularly fun for me to. I mean, when I was writing it, I was smiling. Like it was just like it felt good to write it. It was a good. It
Yes,
was a
and I
good.
was smiling listening to it because
Thank you.
it was beautiful. And yeah, these are all such pleasant ones, and not all are pleasant
Yeah.
experiences that I read, but they're so nicely said. So dare I ask, is there a book coming up? Are you putting
Well,
together something?
yeah. Well, the thought was that was my thought, that I would do like a book of like my childhood ones.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it hasn't been moving very very far, but I
Life
hope.
gets
But
in the way, right?
yeah, life gets in the way. But yeah, I hope to put a book together in the future, and it's almost there, but not quite. And I don't know. I'm very slow. I'm very slow in this process, apparently.
We're all waiting to read it.
No, well, yeah. There you go. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
Okay, okay. On that. Let's go to another of your poem,
Sure.
Changing Landscape. So
Okay.
the last
Nice.
one,
Yeah.
yeah.
So changing landscapes. Moving cautiously through the front drive, the bear takes a moment to sniff the air. It's skinnier than I remember. The late spring affecting the summer crops and the ever expanding deforestation above us. I watch through the window, hoping that I remember to put the bungee cord around the garbage can. The house that was home is empty now. Our love raked over in legalese.
Mm, brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you. I loved this tanka prose, and the tanka is so beautiful. Yeah, it's so deep, I would say. Um, yeah. So, what do you like about tanka? You're quite into tanka, and
Yeah, I am
what
quite.
draws you to write tanka prose? So, I have two questions.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't write. I haven't written a lot of tanka prose, but I'm writing more of it now because I do find tanka is easier for me.
Mm,
And I
yes.
think it's something about those two extra lines. You know, with haiku or senaru, I mean, you have to be very succinct, you know, to get your what you're trying to convey, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
capture that moment. But the other thing about tanka, though, is that you can use simile and metaphor, which I love, and also about the inward and the outward.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit more expansion there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that that's probably why I like it. Just to having a little bit, it has a little bit more room there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I also like, tanka is like one of the oldest forms of poetry.
Yes.
It was, really about relationships and stuff. And I think,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of what I write about in terms of the tanka is about relationship with myself and other people. And it seems a bit harder for me to do that with haiku and senaru in some ways. I don't write a lot of standalone haiku or
Uh-huh.
senaru. It's either in a haibun or it's not. Yeah, it's. I mean, I very rarely would submit a standalone haiku, but yeah,
Mm,
tanka feels right to me. I mean, I
mhm.
never thought I would say that because when I started writing haiku, I was just like in love with it. But then I tried tanka, and I'm quite enjoying it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's tanka for me is so wistful, right?
Mm,
This is so romantic, I feel.
yeah.
That's what I feel tanka is compared
Mm,
to haiku. But
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I can feel that too. Yeah, for
okay.
sure.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So you came to the Haikai world fairly recently, and yet
Hmm.
you're widely published, and you've also served as a Haibun editor of Haiku Katha.
Yes.
Are there any lessons that you can share with our listeners who are new to the form, either Haibun or haiku?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the things that I've learned is to read a lot and
Mm,
to read diversely. Like don't just read one type. Read a lot. The other thing would be to write every day. And
ah,
again, this is something that my dad told me that his writer friends told him to tell me. Amongst the other thing that they told me to tell me was that you'll never get paid. so, so
which is true.
very true. But no, what they said was to write every day, and I really think that that's really valuable. It's like
Mm,
writing is a skill. It's just the same thing as being a runner or something, and you increase your strength the more that you do.
yeah,
So writing every day doesn't have to mean that you're sitting at your computer for hours at a time, banging your head against the keyboard because your muse is quiet. But what it means is like spending time, just even if it's just like 10 minutes every day, just trying but it's also reading. When you're not writing, it's reading.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're not reading and you're not writing, it's thinking about it.
Mm.
Those to me, that those are really important pieces about being a writer, is taking the time every day to do it, because your skill base will increase, I think. The other is finding community.
Ah, yes, so true.
Yeah, because right, there's lots of writers groups around. You can do it online, you can do it in person, and it's really important to get that feedback. Another thing that is really important would be giving feedback. So, you
Yeah,
know, is
yeah,
as important as receiving feedback is giving it, because you learn about writing by doing that as
yes,
well.
very true.
Yeah, collaborating is important. I'm just listing them all, so you can
Yeah.
have them all.
Oh, these are my favorites
Yeah,
as well.
collaborating. I learned this from you, actually, because people don't know this, but some people may know this in the poetry community. But Sangita and I've collaborated many times together, and it's a joyful experience.
Oh, for me too.
It's it's amazing. It's a good learning piece.
Yes,
You learn about
yes,
yourself. You learn about another person. You make
yeah,
friends,
yeah.
which I feel completely delighted to have you as a friend.
Thank you.
And so those are really good things. Another thing that I have found is important is reading your work aloud.
Ah, that's a
So
good one. Yeah,
yeah, because
yeah.
reading aloud, you can feel where there's blockages in the
Yes,
language. And the thing with Haibun is, because it's prose, it doesn't read mostly like a lot of people like free verse poetry, where there's that you can have the flowing language and stuff like that. But it is poetry.
yes.
So reading it aloud, you can feel the musicality of it.
Mm-hmm,
You can see if there's pieces that where a word isn't working, where you're getting stuck up when stuck on it when you're reading, where you're tripping
mm-hmm,
over it.
mm-hmm.
That's really important. What else? Another thing would be, don't rush to get published. I
Here, here.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really big one, and I think it's something that we all learn. I know, like for myself, when I first started writing, and I haven't been writing for that, like I haven't been writing this poetry for very long. I'd write something and I'd be like, "Is it good enough to get published?" Send it off, send it off. But the thing is, you need to sit with a piece. You need to let it marinate. You need to go back and look at it, because what you might think is brilliant one minute, the next day you may not feel is really brilliant.
Yeah.
That's not to say that you may write something right away and it's a piece of art, and it's publishable right away. But you don't need to rush it. You're going to get published. You know, just take your time with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I have found that when I've written stuff and sent it off too quickly, it usually comes back to me
Mm-hmm.
with a thank you, but it's not for us, or it's not
We've
working.
chosen
Yeah,
another one this
yeah,
time.
exactly. So just give yourself the time, and I learned that partly from being in haiku katha, actually, because the nice thing, for people who don't know haiku katha, it's part of the Triveni Haikai India, and it's basically a workshopping group, and it's where they give you a prompt and you write on the prompt, whatever you want to write on the prompt, and then members of that community will give you feedback on it. And what I found was people who would submit stuff right away, they wouldn't give it time to even really give it the prompt any thought, and and then you have to spend all this time like going back and changing and stuff. So to me, it makes more sense just to take a bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
Let it form in the way it's supposed to form, basically.
Right. So it's kind of like wait, look at it after some time, and edit. Right? I
Yeah,
mean,
And that's the part about the community piece as well, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
with if you have, like, you are my sounding board often, of which I completely appreciate.
Ditto, ditto.
Yeah, and it's amazing to have a sounding board. It's amazing
Yes.
to have someone else's eyes on a piece, because, you know, having that extra pair of eyes can really point you in the direction of where there might be some growing edges for a piece.
Yes. Yes. True.
Yeah,
True.
and
Yeah.
yeah, just different ideas, right?
Yeah. Different points of view. Sometimes you're so close to the work that you can't uh, well, see the forest for the trees, like they
Yeah,
say. You're just way too close, and
yeah,
finding somebody who is also a safe space for you
yes,
is very helpful in the sense you know very well this person is going to give you a good feedback without judgmental, I mean, no judgment on your piece or your experience. And I
yeah,
find a lot of people would give judgment on the experience, which is, which I don't know is the way to go or not, but
yeah.
certainly not me. Um, and just to find that safe space is important, I feel. Um, yeah, so it's an integral part of editing, I feel.
I really believe that, and I think that there's nothing better than having that space to do that, where you feel
Mhm.
comfortable and safe to share your work. And
Yeah.
it is a hard thing, and it can be a really hard thing, especially if you are really close to it, or especially if it's a, you know, an emotionally charged piece. To
Hmm.
have someone give you feedback on it, you know, if they don't know you well, or they're maybe they're not super cognizant of the fact that you are holding everything in that little piece, you know,
Yeah.
and you're the wounded bird in that piece, or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. It can be hard,
Yeah.
but it is really important to get feedback, and it's really important to give feedback, because
This is
you
true.
you will really learn about your own writing and what is
Yeah.
important and what you can take out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. One other piece, I guess, that I think is important too, is about the rejections,
Hmm.
because that is also an integral part of being a writer,
Yep.
is putting your work out. Getting accepted is lovely. It's amazing to get accepted, but it's not everything. And rejections are part and parcel of the process. And it doesn't mean that your work isn't special. It doesn't mean
Mm.
that your work isn't valid. It just means sometimes that it's not the right fit for a certain journal. It
Mm.
could mean that the editor doesn't
Yeah.
feel your work. But if you sent it to another journal, it would, you know,
Yeah.
it would be accepted, perhaps.
Yeah.
But it also gives you a chance to go back and look at a piece. And then tied into that is looking at the journals, finding the journals that actually speak to you and are doing the kind of work that you feel is works for you and the kind of writing that you're doing. Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of journals out there.
Yeah. With different shades, right?
Different shades, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something I can speak for myself of that I've learned about, where I want to invest my energy when you're putting your work out there, because it is important. It is your work,
Yeah.
so you want to be happy with where it's going and sitting, right?
Yeah.
Finding its
That's right.
home. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, this is so precious. All these, uh, all these nuggets, you've kind of summarized it all these things that I agree with you 100% on most of this, all of this actually.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. So this was wonderful.
Yeah, it's been a real honor. I wanted to say at the beginning is that I was really honored that I was asked to be on this.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, this is a wonderful podcast. I always enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have most of the Hibernians come and read their poetry so that it's all here for posterity, not just the written word, but also people's voices, and to hear poems in the voice of the poet
Yes.
itself
Yeah.
is a that in itself is a such a beautiful reward for
Yeah.
loving poetry. I think that's beautiful. So that's our endeavor to you know
Mm-hmm.
record Haibun in a very different way. So
Yes.
so thank you, Reid, for
Thank you.
coming and talking to us. And I'm sure the listeners would really, really value all these nuggets that you've given. And we got by without the thunderstorms hitting us still, and there's no hails coming down,
I've heard
right?
nothing. I've heard absolutely nothing. Yay.
Okay.
Although I was actually not mind thinking it would be so bad because I thought it might cool down a little bit outside if it rained, but yeah, oh well.
You don't want hail.
No.
Well, maybe there is a tanka or two waiting for you with the hail. Yeah,
Maybe. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much
Thank
again.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Reid for spending her time with us and reading her deeply touching Haibun and Tanka prose. You'll find more of her work in several online journals. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Ripples in the Sand. If you did, do subscribe to the podcast and share on social media. The music in this episode is by Richard Graham. This podcast is produced by Richard Graham. And this is Sangita Colorical signing off.